Okay, just making sure I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Yeah.
All right. All right, we should be live on YouTube. Let me just get live on Facebook.
Cool.
Oops. Also helps if I make sure the titles are correct all over.
There we go. Okay, so it's in the, I see it.
You see it?
Perfect.
Okay, cool.
Yep. Getting in here and muting. Cool. Oh, and I see you. That's great.
You can see the chat and everything?
Yeah,
you can see me? Cool. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. All right.
Cool.
We are live on Facebook. And come on, one more. Okay, well, we should be live everywhere, so hopefully we will see some people rolling into the chat here shortly. Normally we stream a little bit later in the day, so I think a lot of our people, I did definitely send out a blast to all of our subscribers beforehand to let them know you'd be on live today, so hopefully we should get some traffic in here.
And I'm sending this to our marketing team as well.
Oh yeah, please do.
Stream now. Cool. So the marketing team could plug that. Yeah, I sent an email.
Very good.
Cool.
And just bring up Facebook so I can see commenters over there and make sure we are live on Twitter here. And normally we see people rolling in here a little bit quicker.
Oh, we've got 6 people watching.
There we go. All right.
Yeah.
starting to trickle in.
Yeah, 8 now. Wow, it's
All
going
right.
exponential.
Yeah, they'll show up. I think people are actually pretty excited to be able to interact with you on this one.
Cool. Yeah, for sure.
And we can go as long as you like. So just so you know, there's no real time limit on it. Up to you. I mean, I certainly don't want to monopolize your entire day, but obviously we've got enough time. So
check. Cool.
right.
No, sounds good.
And sorry, I just realized I got to copy my titles into Periscope so that it will get started here. There we go. Okay, we are live everywhere official, so hopefully we will see some people joining us in the chat here.
Awesome.
So, yeah, I guess, well, you know, as many know, you guys did suffer a 51% attack recently. I tried to, I've recently taken 2 schools of thought of, one, I try to go do as much prep as possible beforehand so I can speak articulately about it. And then on the other hand, I realized that there's probably a lot of people that really don't even have any idea what a 51% mining attack means. So I thought maybe I'd start with some, what might seem as uninformed questions and talk about that. So I know you guys had a 51% mining attack. Do you want to talk a little bit about, you know, what that means as far as ZENCash's mining system goes?
Absolutely. So really what a 51% attack is, and like the name implies, is that there's an attacker that is able to gain kind of a sufficient hash rate to inject in a fraudulent or 2 or 3. So yeah, it has, you know, I'm not sure if I should be streaming the YouTube on my end because it's probably eating bandwidth as well.
Oh, right. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that. All right.
Yeah, I could kill the stream and maybe I'll still be able to see the questions.
I can just, I was going to say, that maybe try that, or I was going to say, if nothing else, I can definitely relay chat questions to you.
Okay. I'll try this. I killed the stream, but I see some questions. But
cool.
So yeah. So the whole idea of a 51% attack is some attacker is able to, for some period of time, get a sufficient hash rate on the network to be able to force in a fraudulent transaction. And really, what a fraudulent transaction is they invalidate another transaction, which gives them some way of stealing money from someone. So the typical case is they send money to deposit on an exchange, then they start kind of parallel mining a sequence of blocks in private,
right.
And then they trade the money they deposited on exchange, they withdraw the funds, and then they go and inject in these fraudulent blocks that invalidated their initial deposit into the exchange. And really, they get away with a kind of a heist. It's like a bank heist.
Double spend, right? I mean, effectively.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. That's exactly what it is.
They spent the money, then reordered the transaction so it didn't show that it's spent on the blockchain, and then they get another chance to go spend the same.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is I think there's been some really big misconceptions out there. Is like, number one, there's no new money created. So the coin supply has not been compromised. And your private keys could never be compromised by a 51% attack. You can't 51% attack away someone's private keys. Right. So that's something that we needed to. Probably the first mission we had was to calm people down to realize the system has not been compromised in a way where your funds are at risk or could ever be stolen from you.
Right. Yes, and I think that's why I wanted to kind of start with, let's talk about what a 51% mining attack is, because I think a lot of people just go, it's bad, sell, just dump it all and freak out.
Right.
So
right.
that's part of what I wanted to ask you about is as far as it looks like they did get away with $500,000 if the numbers that I read are accurate between two different attacks. So obviously that's going to shake investor confidence a little bit. Aside from obviously getting on the roadshow and discussing, what sort of steps have you guys taken to restore investor confidence?
Yeah, so I mean, this is a multi-phased approach, and it doesn't happen overnight. So really, the first step in the investor confidence is just look at how the team responded to the attack. And what I've been saying is it's sort of a textbook case of what you should do in this type of attack. So basically, we had set up a tripwire previously anyway, which alerted us immediately to the attack ongoing.
Yeah.
So we had analysts watching real time. Then we had an ops team that was communicating with all of our partners, all of the exchanges, real time, immediately. And then we also had our marketing and PR team documenting events real time, and then communicating this immediately the following morning. Basically, the morning of the attack. It started really early morning hours of Sunday last week.
Yep.
And then we had communication out to the community, just detailing exactly what happened and then the mitigating measures. And really, the most important mitigating measure immediately was the exchanges significantly increased the number of confirmations before they're willing to release deposits. So that's exactly what happened. So Binance increased the number of confirmations to 120. Bittrex had them at 150, and so on. So really, that's what kills it right away.
Yeah.
So that was the most important thing. And then basically we went on a PR roadshow to explain exactly what happened, because there was a lot of misinformation out there.
Sure.
So that's been kind of the grind for the last week of just getting out there publicly and just explaining, like taking kind of a thought leadership role in the industry and explaining exactly what happened. And technically, this isn't rocket science. So immediately our engineers spun up kind of like our own version of a Manhattan project that took us actually less than a week to solve. So basically, we have a way that we're going to be releasing tomorrow in another white paper to append Satoshi Consensus, which is what you get from Bitcoin, to make this sort of thing exponentially costly and hence infeasible. So really, the longer-term solution for us, which isn't all too long, took us a week to modify the engineering, to now we think we have a very nice kind of adjustment to Satoshi Consensus that will make kill this threat for the entire industry, which I think is the best response that we could have.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's even better. Not only fixing your own problem, but preventing it for others who may be on a similar blockchain.
Yeah.
That's
So, I mean, the bottom line is it's not rocket science. I have to say this. It's not magic. It's not rocket science where we know exactly what happens is some nefarious actor is able to garner a sufficient hash rate to basically mine a sequence of blocks in private without disclosing them to the rest of the network so that there can be competitive mining on these blocks, right, and then just inject them all at once. So if you penalize this process where you just can't do this sort of thing, like mine some large number of blocks in private, problem solved.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Well, that's fantastic. That's I think that's definitely something that you would want to get out to the community and make them aware of, because again, I think a lot of people just hear any FUD and immediately react versus doing a little more research. So I know you can't see the questions on Facebook and Twitter, so so far nothing on Twitter. But we do have one on Facebook that says, so before you get started, what are your thoughts on overall volume going away due to institutions using dark pools instead of the exchanges? Good question.
Yeah, that is a really good question. So because of the nature of dark pools, it's really tough to understand the magnitude of what's going on. But ultimately, even dark pools still contribute to the market because if you want to buy some cryptocurrency and you do it in a dark pool, sure, the liquidity is not on an open order book, but you're still accumulating, you're still holding, you're still trading. Right. So I don't think the dark pools are necessarily a bad thing. I wish personally that all of this liquidity were on public exchanges, so then we could see, and not necessarily public, centralized exchanges, but even on DEXs would be really nice.
Sure. Yeah. Agreed. Yes, I agree, and that's something I think people have been kind of concerned about, specifically with Bitcoin, is what's going on with over-the-counter prices and how is that affecting the exchange prices. And I think a lot of people have a misconception that over-the-counter price doesn't necessarily affect exchange price, but effectively, if someone were to get it at a large discount and decide to go offload it for fiat profit, where are they going to go offload it?
And I can tell you from doing OTC deals myself is the market price is always the point of reference for structuring the deal. So it's not like it's done in a vacuum.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So let's see. What else we got? Well, there's a question over on YouTube that says, is Charles Hoskinson working with ZENCash? Is Charles?
He is.
Yeah,
he is. Yeah. So he's one of our advisors officially. But more so, he's the CEO of IOHK, which is our, one of our big R&D partners. So they're actually the company that's doing the kind of the specs and the prototyping for two major R&D projects we have ongoing. One of them being our Treasury voting system, where we're building a voting system directly into our protocol. And then the other one is looking at actually redoing our entire code base and structuring it into a block DAG protocol. So basically arranging our blocks into kind of a tree architecture instead of just having them like a typical blockchain where you have blocks in sequence.
Sure. What what kind of dev, how do I say this? Is that going to be awfully labor intensive to restructure your blockchain?
Oh, sure.
To change the code between now and then?
Oh, sure. The way that we've been doing things, actually, it's kind of funny. We had a comment on WeChat yesterday that we have a very weak engineering team, which is why we have all of these kind of big partnerships with these software companies. I think that was a very big misunderstanding. We have an awesome in-house engineering team, actually led by a guy named Alberto Garofalo, who's used to be the CTO of an Italian software company. And now I have to say, Alberto being in this industry will make waves in this industry. And already, so he's been with us for 4 months now, leading our software team. Now he runs the entire engineering division now. But he's the guy that within a week now of being 51% attacked, he was able to fix Satoshi Consensus that the industry has been using for 10 years to modify the code to make it impossible or exponentially more difficult to do this type of attack. So for instance, there was this one website going around recently about 51% attack costs, and it had us listed at less than a $10,000 cost to do a 51% attack on us for an hour of hash rate control.
Yeah,
so
I read something about like that 30 grand was what they had estimated that it cost because they were renting hashing power from like a nice hash or something like that.
Exactly. So Alberto just ran some simulations on this new technique that we have, and it takes that from like 10,000 to $1 million, and that's even without doing so we even have kind of a functional form where we can swap in some other kind of penalty factor in addition to just this rule, where we can go from $1 million cost to really any arbitrary number that we want to make it difficult. But even, so Bitcoin has like $500,000 cost. So we would already be twice as hard to, attack as Bitcoin. Right. But then we can modulate this to make it, multiples of that if we'd like. So all that to say is we have now incredible in-house talent, but we have an organizational structure where we like to do a lot of different projects in parallel, and you can't do this all in-house. So we have 3 software companies that we partner with. They are doing a whole bunch of other stuff in parallel to our core engineering work that we're doing in-house as well. So it's just a really nice organizational structure we have. And IOHK is one of these big R&D software development partners where we have a crack team of cryptographers, software engineers, PhD level guys, to be doing kind of like the early R&D and the prototyping work. And then the workflow is then we hand it off to another team of production level engineers, right? And then our engineers, like Alberto in particular, work with each of these teams to make sure that it's all integrated well with our system. So it's just a really powerful combination. And I would say in aggregate, it is a massively powerful way of doing business and very strong engineering team.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think a lot of times people that naysay that sort of activity probably have never run a business before, because frankly what it comes down to is there's no shame in asking for help as long as you retain the creative control of the overall vision, I think. So I mean,
exactly.
You're just outsourcing the part of like, here, we've given you the vision, now we just need you to actually go write this code, and then you're still retaining the final say so. So ultimately it's not like you're sacrificing any of your own vision or compromising quality.
No, not at all. And it's even better for us because we have dedicated teams within these companies that just work with us, and that's it. So it's like they're partners and on our team. It's just we pay them differently. Yeah. Right. So it's, I mean, for us, it's a very nice, seamless process, but we still, retain the architecting function in-house, which I think is really important because that's the vision. Yeah,
I would agree with that. So, so back to what you were saying, as far as the modifiers for your mining algorithm, is that going to make it more difficult for, just regular miners to mine? Like, is it?
No.
Okay.
No, not at all. In fact, so we have to put an allowance into this new algorithm that allows honest, simultaneous discovery of blocks. So this was actually the big motivation for Satoshi to create the longest chain rule. Was you have to have some adjudication process that's really simple that allows for the ability of honest miners to just find a block simultaneously. And then what does the system do? Which branch of, which chain do we defer to as a network? Right. So what we do is we allow for this type of natural process to happen. And, we have a very long buffer of blocks mined kind of in sequence before we really kick in that penalty mechanism. So there's no way that any honest miner, for instance, would delay 10 minutes in reporting a block to the network. Right. That's just, there's no way that's an honest miner. And of course, you could construct very extreme edge cases where, say, like, hey, the US is kind of isolated from the rest of the world and you have 2 networks that form. But then there's also an adjudication process here. It just takes a little bit longer. So of course, in reality, there's always trade-offs. There's never really, very clean black and white answers. But the trade-off that we're creating here is very well worth it, where any realistic case of honest mining or kind of network separability gets resolved quite nicely. It just takes a little bit longer.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's good to hear. Just, I mean, effectively, if we're going to enhance decentralization, we can't be making it more difficult for, the mom and pop miners, if you will, for lack of a better way to describe them. But, the smaller operations have
I'll tell you, everything we're doing, we're trying to...
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're trying to ultimately resurrect Satoshi's vision here of decentralization. So particularly when we do this block DAG upgrade, at the first part of next year, this is really designed to make it to collapse the difficulty of mining so that individuals can mine again and be competitive solo mining. That's really our big vision.
Nice. All right, let's see what else we got here. Here's a very vague answer. What is special in ZENCash? I would say ZK snacks. But the next question is, so why would you say that that ZENCash is better than Monero? Everybody's asking this because they know I'm a huge Monero fan. So
yeah, as am I. As am I. I got into Monero early and I've loved it ever since.
Yeah.
But I would say that we're, the way that I view ZENCash, the cash is a bit of a misnomer, and we're doing much more than build out a cryptocurrency. So, I mean, if you want to you could take the look of, our cryptocurrency versus their cryptocurrency in terms of the privacy primitive, sure. Zero knowledge versus, crypto note, and that's okay. You can make that comparison, but really for us, we're really pivoting towards a broader platform. So I look at Ethereum as our big competitor in the long run. We just happen to be a much more secure and kind of privacy-oriented version. So everything that we're doing, we're actually migrating towards an app ecosystem running on side chains. So we have a very nice, elegant kind of decentralized model with voting built in. So the one way that I describe it to people is we're kind of marrying, Bitcoin, ZCash, Dash with the voting system, but we're taking a more rigorous game theoretic approach that we think will be much better. IOTA, because we're kind of tackling the DAG in terms of transaction throughput. Right. So and then Ethereum. So on site, we're building side chains where we're going to have our smart contracting logic. So this is kind of the intersection of where our system lies. So I really don't view Monero as kind of like a direct competitor. I love that project, and I really hope that they continue expanding down the privacy domain for currency. Yeah. But we're taking more of like we're going towards a full data picture, and we want to use zero knowledge cryptography to ultimately protect consumers so that consumers can own their data and monetize that over time.
Yeah, I think that's something that's one of the biggest advantages to the blockchain that or just to this space in general, whether that's Hashgraph or whatever, is just ownership of your own data. And I think that's something that a lot of the uninitiated are unaware of being an advantage. Is how many other platforms are monetizing your data on their own behalf when realistically you could be reaping that benefit. So
exactly,
I think that's an important part of the message to spread. So, so to follow up on that last question, then, since you're talking about a larger ecosystem, I think it's Simon Lean is how this is pronounced, says, will we see ZEN Dex someday? Any plans on that?
Yes, I can say the answer will be yes, if I have anything to do with it. So this is really our goal is to have like a virtual nation with all of the peer-to-peer services that you would expect. And I think a peer-to-peer way to trade is absolutely part of that. So actually we're talking to one potentially amazing business use case to build on top of our one of our side chains, and this would be a sort of a decentralized exchange for a particular asset class. That's very interesting.
Oh, very cool. I'm interested to know more about that. So keep us posted. We'd be happy to have you back on as that develops if you want to discuss it in the future.
For sure.
All right. Let's see. So we have Biscuit, I think is how you say that. So one of the Zen admins hinted at Equihash parameters change. Has the decision been made? Did you address that already?
I have not, and I can say the decision really hasn't been made. So, and to be quite frank, we've had our hands busy, a little bit full with 51% engineering modifications. So we have a hard fork, a big system upgrade going to market in July. So, the way software development works is it's not a good practice to just inject new code into something that's already been tested and ready for market.
Sure.
Because then that's how you introduce crises and big screw ups. So while we do recognize that ASICs are a potential threat to centralization or decentralization, and we want to help protect our GPU mining community, I think that our approach is we're going to take a very rigorous and methodical approach here, where we want to actually test, so try something out, design it, test it, see how it works, test it some more, and then bring it to market. So we're already seeing ASICs hit market, but the good news is they're not just all made by Bitmain. And I don't mean to be picking winners or losers here, but people do get freaked out with Bitmain because they're such a powerful, dominant company. Yeah. But there's already other manufacturers out there that are bringing Equihash ASICs to market. So I think the main threat here of centralization by one company is already being alleviated. So we have a little bit of breathing room to do this right. And a parameter change to Equihash is one possible way. But to be realistic, we don't know that the parameter changes will be sufficiently memory intensive where the Z9 or other equivalents won't be configurable to exploit them anyway. And there's always trade-offs here because we have lower level GPUs that we're going to be essentially knocking out of the market by making this more memory intensive. So there's all trade-offs here. And the bottom line is, I just want to say we understand the risks, but we're looking at this from the broad system perspective, and we just want to make sure that we take our time to find the right solution before rushing the wrong solution that might not make any difference at all. And by the way, we're also looking at a complete algorithm upgrades anyway, not just changing parameters.
Right, yeah. I was going to say, you did say you're planning to potentially redo the code base entirely. So,
yeah.
Very cool. All right, well, let's see what other questions have we got going. It's kind of quiet today. I wonder if this recent downtrend is just hurting too many people's feelings.
Hey, it hurts my feelings.
It's hurting my feelings
when
too.
You see, I have to say, like, when you look at the process, not to toot our horns, we have 55 people on our team. We have 3 software companies we work with, and then the other day, someone called us a shitcoin. I'm like, dude, really? Like, you cannot say that 50+ professionals, 3 software companies, major R&D projects. Like, how does this equate to being a shitcoin?
Yeah.
So I'll tell you, it hurt as well, but I think it's mainly a function of people not taking the time to learn more about what we're doing and how we're organized.
I think that's ultimately it. I think a lot of people, I mean, myself included, I generally, when projects are forked off of another project, my initial reaction is always scam, because I'm like, it's a money grab. And so I wonder if maybe that's it, because they know that ZENCash, what is it? Like, ZENCash is a fork of Zcash, which is a fork of ZClassic. Did I get that order correct? Did I mix it up?
The other way around.
Okay.
So Bitcoin to Zcash, and then ZClassic was a clone of Zcash.
That's right.
And we forked Zclassic. So this I hate saying this, because this is exactly what you said. Is people hear that and they're like, okay, scam.
Yeah. Right.
Let's not look any further into it. The whole reason was we wanted to grab the Snark library, and we wanted to grab it quickly. Sure. Because it was already operating with these other projects. So that's why we did it. But then everything that we've been doing engineering-wise since then is completely different from any of those other projects. So I think it's really important. Number one, we're rebranding. We're in the process of that right now. I think that's very important. And then number two, we're redesigning the entire code base. So I think, I can't wait for the day in the near future when we could say we're no longer the fork of a clone.
Yeah, definitely. So with the rebrand, are you guys changing the name? Are you going to change the ticker and all that kind of stuff as well? Are you doing? So just don't go from something cool and unique like Rayblocks to something generic like Nano.
Yeah. So what I did was, well, I can tell you, I love Zen and I love the ticker symbol Zen.
Right.
But I didn't want to put any constraints on the creative team. What I said was, figure out exactly what's best for the project, and then we'll talk about it from there. There's no holds barred. So we'll see where it goes. I didn't want to limit these guys in any way, because they are geniuses when it comes to this stuff.
Sure.
And I would rather let the geniuses figure this out. What I learned is you don't let engineers and scientists make creative decisions is usually not the best way to go. So we learned this the hard way, where now we have actual product guys, we have designers, we have like very creative people that are kind of like leading these parts of the project that need that. And we have the engineers and scientists working on core tech. So yeah, that's kind of like the separation of, yeah, exactly.
The hammer is not the right tool for every job. So.
But this is how we differ from other projects on the market. Is a lot of, like, I would say most blockchain projects are really just kind of a group of engineers that are building things because the infrastructure is cool and the technology is cool. But really, you need an integrated kind of full stack business approach. And I think this is where we're starting to really lead the way in the industry. There's just so few people understand what we're doing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's what coming out on the road show and you know,
yeah,
speaking to people live is good for. So
yeah.
Let's see. So I think you sort of addressed this earlier, but we might have had a late joiner. So how did you find out you were under attack, and then how did you? He says, "Is there an active monitor, or do you wait for a phone call? And then how long does it take to notify the exchanges? And how did you do that?"
No, so we threw in a tripwire. So actually, a few weeks before this happened, when it happened to a few other projects on the market, we realized this is a real threat to the industry now.
Yep.
Whereas we have not been taking it seriously as an industry. And the reality is nothing's changed with the Bitcoin-like code base for the longest chain rule since 2009.
Right.
And we haven't had this wave of attacks since 2009. So I think we finally hit an inflection point in the market where the cost of mining and the kind of hash rate for rent services have just exploded to where now it's actually economically feasible to pull off these attacks. So now what we did was, because we knew it was a threat, we set up a tripwire system that basically looks at our like variance in our hash rate. So we're always looking at kind of a variance in hash rate that goes above our statistical distribution of what's normal. And when this happens, it sends us an alert, and then we have analysts that right away dive into the blocks, into the chain, and look at what blocks are being processed. Are there other abnormalities going on right now? Or is it just a natural kind of shift, and maybe a large farm just came online and pointed towards us? So that's what happens. And then if we see, you know, once the analysts are monitoring the chain, and if we see anything weird going on, like a potential double spend, then we immediately reach out to all of the exchanges. And I see another question here of how long does it take to reach out? This happened within the first hour of the time we were online with all the exchanges. So we have an excellent business development division, and they've put together kind of a nice point of contact list for all of our exchange partners.
Nice.
That our operations team then kicks into gear, and our ops team then reaches out immediately to all of our POCs, and boom, right away within the first hour, everyone was alerted. They all took mitigating actions, and the damage was significantly constrained.
Yeah, I mean, and by and large, it didn't take a huge hit, at least initially, on your pricing, and then, you know, I mean, everything's kind of dropped off since Sunday, but you know, I mean, it wasn't as bad of a drop off as I might have anticipated. I'll say, like, you know, and do you think that speaks to the strength of your community, or talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I would say both. The strength of our response, the team, the community itself. But then we had where you see the big drop off was when a prominent newsletter writer actually said, sell Zen because their coin supply has been compromised.
Oh, and I know. I know who that is.
Yeah, exactly. And they're printing Zen out of thin air. So that was unfortunately a misunderstanding. Which,
that's what happened to Verge, but that's not what happened to you guys.
Exactly, exactly. So it was a very different case. I wish that was better understood, but I think there was panic in the market because of that, which is very unfortunate because this also happened in a big Bitcoin dive. So we just had a double whammy that, you know, from my perspective, it makes us very attractively valued, I would say, because really the project didn't warrant that kind of sell-off. So, you know, everyone that I've talked to since then, you know, says exactly that. Like when they first read that, they panicked, and when they've actually learned the truth, they got back in. So we'll see how it goes. You know, the reality is, if any risk appetite has changed, which is completely understandable, you know, I would never tell people invest in Zen beyond your risk appetite. So that's something that everyone needs to take, you know, their own decision on that.
Yeah, and I mean, that's something we push pretty hard on this channel, and is, you know, don't get in this entire industry is highly speculative, frankly.
Yes.
I mean, you and I have chosen to go into it professionally, but you know, it all could go away tomorrow, perhaps. So always, only ultimately, it's a good maxim to live by. Only gamble with money that you can afford to lose. And while I don't like to think of my cryptocurrency ventures as gambling per se, when it's this highly speculative, it's a little bit. So
exactly.
You know, always best to never overcommit and over leverage yourself.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And even when I tell people, like, who love our project, I say, don't invest all of your money in Zen, guys. Like, number one, don't invest all your money in crypto. And then even within crypto, you want to diversify.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's see. We've got Ramon Molero. Fast forward 5 years. Will there be any more updates to the block reward percentages for nodes? It's a good question.
Yeah, so this is a great question because actually with our hard fork in July, we're changing the block reward percentages that we're paying out. So right now we have about 12,000 nodes, secure nodes, running on a 3.5% block reward payout. We're actually increasing that to 10% in July.
Oh, wow.
And then we're also introducing a new class of nodes called super nodes that have a 500 Zen stake requirement, which is a little more than 10 times the secure node stake. And then these guys are going to have their own dedicated 10% funding line. So in total, we're going from 3.5% of block rewards to 20% of block rewards in July. Wow. So that's actually a huge shift in economics. And I'll tell you, I'm very excited about it. Not just from the perspective of having an additional kind of type of node, these super nodes, which is very cool in itself because they'll be like the pit bosses in our system to like the secure nodes or like our dealers in our casino. So yeah, these guys will be actually doing like all of the tracking and payment logic on chain, which is a really cool thing for decentralization. So that's something I'm really excited about. And the economics change because we're implementing a voting system at the end of the year, and people panic about ASICs like Bitmain ASICs, where Bitmain will be able to kind of privately mine all the Zen and then be able to vote on our voting system and control the system. But having 20% of the block reward going to other stakeholders besides miners, I think is a huge buffer that a lot of other projects don't have in this sense. So our network, and we'll also layer in other types of kind of like integrated proof of work, proof of stake, safeguards into the system in the near future. Actually, even to kind of double down on our 51% protection, and then having a distributed stake where new Zen creation doesn't only go to miners, I think is a really important kind of like decentralizing element to this ecosystem.
Agreed.
I'm sorry. I didn't answer the original question. So let me say. So in July we have this big consensus change for the block reward distribution, and I'll also say the treasury pool that we have right now has 8.5% of block rewards. We're upping that to 10% because we're actually going to be paying people to vote in the near future on how resources get allocated, and that payment will be coming out of this pool. So we wanted to maintain kind of stability where we'll still have the same resource amount, but we'll also have a padding on there to be able to pay voters. So the way that this will change in the future is through voting, through the community, not from our team making this decision and then socializing with the community. Right. It'll be the community directly voting on these changes.
That is pretty cool, actually. That gives users a little more skin in the game, so to speak.
Exactly. Yeah.
So Jay Ward says, will supernodes make GPU mining less feasible?
No, not at all. It's completely separate process there. So actually, supernodes are going to be purely designed for initially like tracking and doing automated payments for our secure node system, and then they'll be tasked with doing other kind of higher order functions in the system. So we have another app that we're designing called ZEN Grid, which is essentially like an AWS service or a computation for rent service that uses our massive machine system right now. So we first built out the industry's second largest node system, and now we're working on services to utilize that system in a way that the node operators will earn additional income. So that's just one example of a whole kind of suite of apps that we're building that ultimately our node operators to earn additional income. But the whole point of this stuff is to ultimately run our side chains and ultimately run the app platform. So this is a completely separate process than mining. And in fact, when we do the block DAG upgrade towards the end of the year, I think this will make solo GPU mining, or sorry, not end of the year. This will realistically be Q1 of next year, probably the end of Q1 next year, because we have to redesign the entire protocol.
Right, sure.
But that will be where solo GPU mining should be very profitable, and that's what I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, making things more energy efficient, I think, is one of the main imperatives. And I'm still more. I like the proof of stake system, but I'm also not a huge fan of like the Electoral college. And so, you know, as it gets over into delegated proof of stake,
Yeah.
I understand its necessity as far as being you know, an energy saver for widespread adoption. But yeah, I think finding other ways to try to make it more energy efficient to utilize the blockchain is always a good thing. So, so being able to mine with solar power is definitely a pretty green way forward.
Yep.
All right, so let's see. So this is a regular user here, or a regular visitor of our channel. Johnny B says, dumped on my Zen the day after the news of the hack broke. Should have dumped it in the instant the news the hack broke. Had plenty of forewarning on this. Bitcoin Gold and Verge had a number of attacks. Website's been there for a week. Saying now they want to. Oh wow, he's going hard.
He's starting to kick in the groin here, but I don't think he necessarily understands software development. We had a few week notice, and we actually set up a tripwire system so that we can understand what's going on. And our engineers have been designing actually a real way to change consensus to make this infeasible. So this isn't the kind of thing where you can go and change the software on 12,000 nodes overnight. That is a kind of a silly way of looking at distributed software development and deployment of these systems. It takes us, we're in realistically about a 3-month software dev cycle before we can create something, test it sufficiently, and then push it out to the entire system in a safe way. So that's the reality of it.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, it's steering a ship as with anything, and like you were saying earlier, you know, you want to make sure you're plugging the holes as much as possible before you deploy.
Yeah, and also put this in context. So there was one of our partners lost $500,000 in a system that was, you know, for an exchange this makes $1 billion a year, and for a system that was worth, you know, over $100 million. Really, this isn't. This is a crisis in terms of confidence, but I think that the real crisis, if you look at what happened initially, it wasn't a massive sell-off after that event happened. It was a massive sell-off after a misunderstanding communicated about what happened.
Yeah, that's fair.
So.
All right, so let's see if I've got any other comments popping up here on Facebook. I get yelled at a lot because I don't look at Facebook as much as I should.
Likewise.
Yeah, not too much going on. So we had Kevin Lytle saying, what company is this? ZENCash, in case you hadn't caught that by now, Kevin Lytle. And yeah, so somebody was replying to Johnny B saying you could buy back now for way less. So I suppose that is another way to look at it, is if you did get out beforehand, or if this is a long-term project. All crypto's on sale right now. So.
Yeah, but you know, and his comment's a fair comment. You know, if you look at our team and you think that we're mismanaging things and that we don't have adequate talent and we're just not doing things right, for sure, don't invest in Zen. That's something you should invest in other projects. But show me another team that I think is kind of performing at our rate. I challenge that, and I think that what we're doing is actually a very good thing. And of course, we're not perfect, so we're trying to evolve as we go here, just like anything else.
Sure. Well, you know, I think I think you guys jumped on it and did the best you could as far as mitigating the damage. I'll put it this way: compared to my favorite project to bash, at least you didn't have exactly the same thing happen within 3 weeks of itself.
Yeah. Knock on wood.
and yeah, exactly. So far, anyway. But you know, I think that's part of it. Is just you guys have got probably a significantly more robust team, and that you know, again, I'm trying to not throw out any names here. You know who I'm talking about. But they've got a rabid community behind them, so you know they seem to recover quickly enough. So I think ultimately, if you've got enough user confidence, that ultimately this hopefully will be a blip in the short term.
Yeah, you know, the way that I look at this is it's a nice opportunity to take lead in the industry now and push forward what we think is a really nice proposal to fix this, once and for all.
Agreed. So let's see here. Let's see. So David Dobson says, thank you for these interviews. People don't realize what a huge privilege it is to be able to ask the CEO questions about your investment live. I agree with that. We just had the Origin Trail guys on, and you know, we've had, I mean, I've watched through, I was a watcher of this channel before I was actually on it. And, you know, I watched through a lot of the interviews, and it's it gives you a lot more perspective on the real vision of the company and where they're going, and I just think it's a great thing. So I'm grateful that you decided to come on and take this opportunity to address the community directly.
No, likewise, I appreciate it, because unfortunately, there's so much misunderstanding about what happened and what can be done about it. So any opportunity I have to get out there into the public and talk about it, I think is I'm very, very appreciative of. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's I like I said, I didn't. I think I might have actually been in the room when Sam interviewed you last time, but I definitely watched it afterwards and was like, yeah, I like this guy's overall outlook. So. When
I appreciate that.
Had reached out saying you wanted to come on and address it, I said absolutely. That's kind of a no-brainer for me.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much.
Somebody says, "Aren't you just a little ray of sunshine to our friend Johnny B?"
Yeah.
Yeah, and Jay Ward says it's like Musk said, if you don't like volatility, don't invest in crypto. I mean, that's kind of why anybody would get into this market without understanding that there are such vicious swings in the value of every project. That's just, I mean, this is part of what we try to push, right? And an educated investor is or a successful investor is an educated investor. I don't know if an educated investor is always a successful investor, but you're certainly going to set yourself up further along the right steps to know what you're getting involved in, certainly.
Yeah, totally agree.
Well, I don't want to monopolize your entire afternoon here, but is there any other specific topics you want to address while we've got everybody live, or anybody who is watching right now? Is there anything specifically that you would like Rob to answer before we wrap up? Feel free to post it in the chat, either Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. Anybody? Anybody?
Well, I'll just start talking then until someone else jumps in. But yeah, I would say that really our ultimate goal and where we're going, and you'll see us pivoting as an organization, is we're starting to focus more on products and thinking about what we're going to do with this technology to actually make people's lives better. So I think all the cool stuff that we talked about with the infrastructure, the DAG stuff, the voting system, the node architecture, it's really cool, but that's not the big point here. And I think that other projects will start to realize this as well, as building tech for the sake of tech is completely missing the point. Yep. And we need to be thinking about how are we going to get those 10 million, 100 million users in products that they actually love and use every day and don't even realize that they're running on a blockchain. Yep. So that's ultimately where we're going. And I think that's where the industry needs to go. And we would love to take lead on that. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's, so much of this industry is a good idea, a website and a white paper. It's nice to see people that are actually, I think another thing is you see some of these companies raise all this money and then they're like, all right, now what do we do with it? You can continue to just develop tech, but by and large, user adoption is really going to be the make or break point for any of these projects. Yep. Yeah, no, I completely agree with you on that. Let's see. So David David says, Rob, could you go over the Satoshi Consensus again with regards to the mechanism of your penalty built in? Sure. So Satoshi Consensus just means the longest chain rule. So if you ever have a divergence, say like two miners that solve a block in parallel or simultaneously, you ultimately have the entire network defer to whichever sequence has the most accumulated work on it. So what we're doing is we recognize that the actual threat here is when a malicious miner goes and mines a whole sequence of blocks privately without broadcasting that to the network, and then just injects the sequence simultaneously, like all at once. And then honest network participants will look and say, well, this chain here has more work on it, therefore it must be the legitimate chain. Right. And that's unfortunately not the case. So our penalty mechanism basically penalizes you for delayed reporting of block solves. So if you solve a block, we want you to report that to the network immediately, and this is what every honest miner does. Sure, that's and if your consensus mechanism is supposed to work. Exactly, but unfortunately, this longest chain rule, if blindly followed, it has a shortcoming, which is someone could just mine a whole sequence in private and then inject them all at once and invalidate a whole string of honest and legitimate blocks. So this is what we're penalizing. So any delayed reporting of blocks actually gets kind of a functional penalty metric assigned to it. And then the consensus is now a joint consensus where you look at both the aggregated or the accumulation of work, and then also penalty greater than 0. It actually will not be deferred to. So basically, honest miners will defer to penalties that are 0, yeah. So you get it. So basically, you don't want to encourage the ability, or at least allow the ability of this kind of private mining without reporting.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I mean, that's the easiest way to at least directly interact with preventing further occurrences of the same sort of attack. Certainly. Right. Yeah, and it's not foolproof. So I actually joked around with titling this paper "Pretty Good Protection Against 51% Attacks," which it's the whole PGP reference, pretty good privacy. If you guys are that cryptography. So I love that title. Our marketers don't like it because they think it doesn't instill enough confidence. I'm also a mathematician, so like my thought whenever I look at anything is, yes, we're driving the probability of attack close to 0, but it's never going to be 0, guys. Right. And we have to be honest about that. But we can keep on layering on different defensive methods, and that's exactly what we plan on doing. So there's actually an option 2, which we considered publishing as well, but we're actually reserving that for a future iteration, which is using a sort of kind of like rotating notarization service where our kind of notarize at certain block intervals. Blocks have been published to chain. Which then kind of like certifies them as being valid blocks. And this is actually a process that Komodo has pioneered, and Game Credits actually leverages Komodo's system to use the Komodo chain as a sort of notarization service for their blocks. Now, I think this is interesting, but I think that ours actually gets to the heart of the problem directly. So I think that's the first approach, which drops the probability close to 0 and the cost at $1 million plus to roll a dice to try to, rob an exchange, which makes it now economically prohibitive. And then in the future, we'll layer on this kind of notarization mechanism to really just drive the probability even lower. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. That seems pretty savvy. Yeah, right. So there's a lot of ways to skin a cat. Definitely. I would never do that, though. Yeah, of course not. I like cats. Yeah. I like cats. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, let me just scroll through, make sure I didn't miss anything here. Yep, I think. Oh, somebody was commenting. You guys are doing a. You're going to do a talk tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Actually, what channel is that going out through? So it's our YouTube channel. We actually do this every 2 weeks. We do like almost like a full quarterly board review for a corporation, but we do this every 2 weeks. So we tell our community exactly what we've been doing, and all of our divisions report. So you'll hear like the engineering updates, the kind of business development updates, the marketing ops updates, like everything that we have ongoing, including all of our kind of country and regional leads report on all the activities going on around the world. So it's actually a really informative thing that we do bi-weekly for the community. So I encourage everyone to check it out if you're interested in the project. I think that's really cool, actually. I mean, it's almost like sitting in on a board meeting, or Exactly. That's a rare thing, to be honest. I think that's very cool. Yeah. I mean, everybody's got a Telegram group or whatever, but being able to get the full report from the various divisions, that's unique. Yeah, and I can tell you when we first started doing this, it was like Rolf and I, like my other co-founder, just doing this stuff on like whiteboards and just like really, shoestring budget, kind of ghetto. And now we have, if you look at the most recent bi-weeklies, it's actually incredible. So the team that we have actually putting together the slides and like figuring out kind of what we should be highlighting, what we should be talking about is absolutely incredible. And I've actually never worked for a better organization that does more effective communication than this. So I highly recommend everyone check it out. And I can't claim credit for this stuff either. I just get to pretend to take credit and talk to the slides, but it's really the team just like kicking butt. And actually Miss Crypto Foo's on the team, so she's one of these people that kicks butt on putting these things together. Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that's who was saying, oh, they'll talk tomorrow. So I was like, oh, very cool. Somebody's in the know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, if you guys want to shoot us a link to that, I'd be happy to post it in the comments for the video, so anybody that watches this from today forward can go check it out. So if you guys want to, or if you want to send me a link to in the chat, I'll post it in the comments.
Cool. No, perfect. We'll do. Thank you very much.
For sure. All right. Well, I think we're getting close to the hour now. So usually we try to keep the broadcast to an hour or under. So unless there's anything else immediately pertinent, and we'll go ahead and get this wrapped up.
Cool. No, I think that's good. And everyone, I think you have all of the links, right? Do you have the ZENCash.com link? It's really, everything's on there. All of our comm channels, everything. So anyone who's interested, please check it out and, come participate.
Very cool. Well, hey, Rob, thanks again for coming on the channel, man. Again, anytime you guys, we like you, we like your project. So anytime you guys want to reach out and talk to the community, we're happy to give you an avenue to do so. So
I appreciate it.
Let us know what kind of developments you have coming, and we're happy to spread the word.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you to the guys in the comments. Maybe what was his name, Johnny B or whatever. Sorry to hear you're not very happy with us, but appreciate everyone else's comments and support here. So this has been great.
Yeah, and thanks everybody for coming on, and we will see you. I think maybe I'm not gonna stream later today because I usually do an evening stream, but I think I've got enough other stuff going on that hopefully this will provide enough content for the day. And
awesome.
Other than that, we'll wrap it up. So Rob, thanks again, man, and we look forward to talking with you here again in the near future. This is Jason from Cryptosomniac. I'm out. See you later.
Cool. Thanks, Jason.
All right.
Bye.
Take it easy, Rob. So, Rob, thanks again, man, and we look forward to talking with you here again in the near future. This is Jason from Cryptosomniac. I'm out. See you later.
Cool. Thanks, Jason.
All right.
Bye.
Take it easy, Rob.